I come inside that quiet place inside that is oh so familiar. It's my place of reflection where I step outside of day-to-day thoughts. My mind and attention is more free to really see what's going on inside, not on the surface, but what's driving my activity through the day. Of course, seeking particular outcomes or attainments is there. But there's also certain beliefs that are shaping my attitudes, my choices, and my actions. And I may not be completely clear on those beliefs I'm holding, but those beliefs are very powerful. They can completely color how I organize the outer world, how I interpret what's going on, how I react to what's going on, and how I understand or maybe don't understand what others are doing. Beliefs about myself, beliefs about how others should be, beliefs about how the world should operate, and even beliefs about God. In the quiet place inside that's clean and silent, I can look honestly at my beliefs. Maybe starting with the beliefs about myself. Do I believe I am the body that is temporary? Or do I believe I am a soul, eternal? Do I believe I am intrinsically good? Do I believe I can change and grow? Checking these beliefs inside. They have so much power over my outer activity. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. And tonight's session is Power of Belief. It's interesting that you had suggested this topic, but I was thinking about something that we were learning about in this study in terms of the intellect and how I see. That whatever I understand is how I see. So I'm just checking in within myself, just how those two aspects are related. So it's interesting you brought up this topic of the power of belief.
Yeah, I remember, excuse me, in drawing class, we've talked about this before, but this idea that drawing is how you see more than any skill in the hand. And so when we look at people draw the same object, but everyone draws, there's vast differences in what's drawn. And I was always aware of that in drawing class. And again, I know we feel that it's some sort of skill in the hand, but there was so much difference in terms of, the way that souls were seeing or interpreting the same stimuli. So really, it's a fascinating topic because when I was drawing class, I was very aware there was an objective way of seeing this. And then there was all these subjective ways of seeing it. and how close, and it's up to the preference whether or not one wants to get close to the objective or not. In a drawing class, it's really not of much concern. In fact, it can be considered quite creative to distort what is objective, as long as I know that's what I'm doing. But obviously, in day to day life, this can become quite critical. The classic example is eyewitness testimony. Is we assume with eyewitness that there was objective viewing of the situation, but it has been revealed time and again that it's actually very subjective. So that can have huge ramifications. So, how important is it to be able to see clearly? When is it appropriate for that interpretation to happen? Creative freedom, if you will. But when is it quite critical to have that clarity in how I'm seeing things?
I know there was a very recent chat you actually had with your cousin. And he said, okay, yeah, we could see things that way, but I could see things another way. That could be possible, plausible as well. But I was thinking about then, being able to know for myself. I suppose it has to do what do I believe is real then. And I think maybe that's where your cousin was coming from. Well, you can sort of, just craft anything that's real.
We were listening to a class just before this session, and there was one point that was made by the soul who was sharing that really touched me, and I thought was really important to reflect on. And they were making a relationship between truth and benevolent. That's a very important connection, because then we're not just saying my opinion, your opinion, but there's now this added element of what is benevolent, what is beneficial. And by connecting truth to benevolence, that would inspire us to get as close to the truth as possible, that we want that which is most benevolent to happen. So, the conversations about my belief, your opinion, together, all focusing not that I'm trying to convince you of something or you're trying to convince me, but we're both trying to get closer to the truth because it is the key to what is benevolent.
I suppose that there are these indicators, but sometimes the indicators can be quite invisible or incognito.
And yes, they can be incognito. And I think that's why the idea that truth is found in silence, that we need to have a good relationship with silence so that the truth becomes more clear or revealed in the silence. One way it's been described as the silence is sort of like the surface of a pool of water. And if I'm looking into the pool of water to get a reflection of the self or anything, if the pool of water is very calm or silent, the reflection is far more undisturbed. But if there's upheaval on the surface of the water, then it's very distorted. So silence as well is giving me a better and better reflection of what is truth or benevolent or eternal. These are interchangeable. So I want to have a good relationship with silence.
It's interesting. I know earlier today I was referring to this story. I don't even remember the name of it. I was mentioning about this nanny who reminds me of Mary Poppins, but it's not Mary Poppins. And this nanny, she has some sort of special capacities, and she has these warts all over her face. And it's relevant to the storyline, but there's a family with children who are quite mischievous and perhaps maybe lost because of their situation. And then she suddenly just appears out of nowhere, and she's really there to help them sort of navigate and basically kind of help them to move forward in a meaningful way. But I think every time there's a good deed that is done, a wart disappears, and then it's always connected to some virtue. And so I was sharing earlier this morning about the word resolve, which was actually the last quality in the entire story. And that quality really touched me. And while I was actually on my way to another destination today, I was thinking about that word resolve, and I couldn't really separate resolve and silence. Actually, like when your heart is healed, what happens within inside yourself, and what happens to the thoughts in your mind. And I feel I was thinking a lot about that because many hear the word silence and we kind of go in different directions with it, not the way that you're referring to.
Of course, this month we're looking at this theme of an honest heart, which could also be connected to being truthful. And this idea that I also enjoyed, that the heart is really at peace when we are honest or truthful. And otherwise, it sort of sits in there heavily and biting conscience and all these sorts of things. So to have that inner silence means that the conscience is, the self is at peace. So resolve, to come to a point of resolution or resolve, this feeling that I'm at peace internally, the conscience is at peace, that the heart is clean. And that does create an inner silence. Otherwise, there's a lot of noise. In fact, often when we feel inner discomfort, we start to create beliefs that will rationalize what's going on, which really doesn't resolve anything. So the saying that the truth does not try to prove, it can remain silent, it will simply be revealed at the end of the day. It's just so at peace with itself. So that's where the soul ultimately wants to get to, is that inner silence, that inner peace.
Since it was something that I've been thinking a lot about in terms of understanding and how I see, and the words that were used was a divine intellect and spiritual vision. And if I use these two consistently, my attitude would change and the quality of my actions would change. But for whatever reason at the time I was reflecting, I didn't really know that there would be a difference between the two. Not technically speaking, but I was wondering if you could share a bit about that, if you have any thoughts.
I think the suggestion is that, and again, it's a belief, may or may not think it's true, that our baseline way of operating, our original way of operating, is actually quite elevated. We have a good working intellect, so we're sensible and clear and honest and true and pure and all these wonderful things. That's kind of our baseline. And we move away from that true state. And I just want to say that this is a very interesting application of the word true, which I've always liked. When you go to get the bicycle tires aligned, that service is called truing the tires. And what it's saying is you're bringing the tires back into alignment. And so the suggestion to true the self, or to align with the truth, to get back into my intrinsic or original state, which again we feel is intrinsically good. And in that state, because it's so clean inside, my inner world, we could say intellect, operates in a very elevated or divine way, so very benevolent, but also how I interact with the outer world, my vision, is also very elevated, or we say spiritual. So I'm able to see other souls in a very kind way, a very respectful way, when I am true, when I am aligned with my intrinsic state. And then again, the heart is at peace. So there's that inner peace.
It's really interesting because yesterday, what really stayed with me was the connection between purity and fortune. And it really stayed with me in terms of this aspect of misfortune, seeing things always in an unfortunate way, or seeing the bad side of things, or seeing things that don't work. And what really stayed with me is that when you become yourself again, you actually start to, you just can't help but see things in a different light. And I find that just so fascinating.
Yeah, the idea was we call it a golden aged intellect, but good working intellect, a sensible intellect, actually cannot take sorrow. So it won't experience something as misfortune. It cannot take sorrow. It's just not built to do that. So, and I think the feeling too, it also would not give sorrow. So something, and what that's basically saying, because when we're saying there's misfortune in this, we tend again to be focused on the outer world. This is going wrong for me. That's going wrong for me. This isn't working. That's the person's not doing this. Where actually what's being suggested is my inner functioning that is off. And that's affecting how I experience everything out there. So the example we sometimes use is, when there is that purity or innocence for children, they see an empty box in the living room. An adult would say, oh, this is garbage. We have to get rid of it. It's cluttering up the space. And a child would say, wow, this is a fort. This is wonderful. So the same stimuli viewed in very different ways, depending on the inner state of the soul. So, yes, when we're pure, when there's that good functioning inner world, then we experience the outer world. We see the outer world. We have different beliefs about the outer world when the inner world is very elevated.
So it's interesting, is it then, this aspect of vice and virtue, just, I'm not sure what the words are, but just because it's just a certain lens of how you see things, but in the sense that, in a way, darkness just begets darkness. It just, it just has, it's just like the law of inertia, just that's all it can sort of stay in. But it seems very different from someone just trying to find something positive in the situation, which isn't a bad thing. I can't discredit that endeavor. The soul must be, of course, wanting, any sense of negativity in, but it seems to be very different still.
Yeah, I think the deeper place it can come from, we say from a true heart or an authentic place, but um, again, it's the belief. I really deeply have to believe this. I can't, sort of hope it's true or act like it's true and go through the motions, but deep down inside, I don't believe it. Again, the power is in the belief. So it has to come from that very pure heart, those deep feelings. And the example we often give is the example of that iceberg, that on the surface trying to flow one way, but there's so much under the surface that's going in the opposite direction. So similarly, it's like, if I walk up to someone and, I sort of might say something like, that's a lovely Christmas sweater. But underneath, that's not what I believe. They're going to feel the belief, the vibrations, much more than the words. So those feelings have a deeper impact.
Just us touching on this topic is making me think of something that I remember having questions about since I was young. But as I continued on in this journey, it became a much more fuller um, sense of understanding. But the question I always had was, is it possible to become innocent again? But as I continued on, I realized it wasn't just about innocence, it was pure vision, pure attitude, pure intentions, etc., etc. But I realized that maybe perhaps many don't feel that that's possible, but it's not even just that, to be able to unsee something again. Like I remember as you were sharing when you were young, it never crossed your mind that, your physical mother has dark skin. And then all of a sudden you're at a certain age. And it wasn't, I assume at that time, it wasn't like a negative thought, but using just that as an example, I was suddenly thinking about Othello. He had no, if anyone knows about Othello, but this character had no ill vision about his wife until I'm not sure, his right hand started feeding him these certain thoughts. And then it really affected his vision. But for someone reading, could they be able to say, is it possible you could be able to actually unsee that? I know it's sort of a fictitious thing, but I feel it's very relevant in terms of what individuals are going through in life.
I think that's a speciality of something like Raj Yoga. So, what it does, yes, first we have pure vision, and then that vision changes. We see things in a different way. But then another, more ideas or understandings are introduced. We call it opening the third eye, if you will. But this idea of I'm taking the same material, but I'm now looking at it in a different way. I'm reframing. So in psychology, there's this exercise you do called the hag and the young woman. Many people, when they first look at the picture, they see one of them. They either see the hag or they see the young woman. And everyone's saying, yeah, no, can't you see the other one? Can't you see it? And they're trying to point and eventually say, oh yeah, now I see it. I see it. And it's like, you can't unsee it. But then if someone comes in with a completely different way, actually it's an elephant. And suddenly now you see neither the old woman or the young woman, you just see an elephant. So they've taken the same material, but put it together in a different way, reframed it. And that's extremely powerful. So I'm not blinding myself. I'm not pretending to ignore. I literally have a different lens that I'm looking through now, using the same information, but with a different understanding. So I reframe.
I'm so glad you mentioned about that, because when I heard about this, if you use your intellect and your vision in the right alignment, it could change your attitude and your actions. And I was like, that sounds like gold. Okay, am I doing it? And lately, it's just the last couple of days, just the faith that I'm a soul just really touched me. And it was during early morning meditation where I don't even feel like I'm a soul, but just the wonder and just, I don't know, it just touched me so much that even though I don't feel like one, that it was such a feeling of a deep knowing. And it made me realize the context of this intellect and seeing, and made me realize as well, do I do that all the time when it comes to these eternal truths? And it also made me realize, maybe in a subtle way, we're still trying to see something. And if we don't see something, then we kind of have doubts or force something. It can get quite subtle.
Yes, because we call it, this is why we say third eye of knowledge. The truth is not really physical, it's eternal, so it can't be physical. So to see means, of course, to understand. So there's the physical eyes, and we put a lot of faith in the physical eyes, and science is included in that. And then there's this whole other way of seeing or understanding that's not physical, and that provides a beautiful reframing. If I can make that vision, the non-physical vision, this other understanding that's aligned with what is eternal or true, if I can begin to make that more powerful, it can actually override what just the information from the physical eyes. And that's really important. An example would be, let's say you see someone presenting or acting in a certain way, and then you come to conclusions. Your physical eyes are seeing them behave in a certain way or speak in a certain way, and you feel that you're completely righteous in the beliefs you're developing over what you physically see, what your physical senses pick up. But then if this understanding, this different way of seeing, this understanding, other information is given, it completely reframes. Like at an emotional level, it completely changes how you feel over what's being presented. So I think we can each think of these kinds of situations where we came to one conclusion and then we got some more information and we literally saw things in a different way, given this new understanding, having things in a new light. So it's really powerful. It's probably the one thing that can change our beliefs is if we can start to have different understanding.
I know we're running out of time, but we had some technical issues, so we started a little late. But just this last thing you were sharing, is that then the connection between understanding and feeling? I don't mean like feeling emotions, but sensing something, because now there is understanding and then there's feeling and then there's seeing, and not about the technical, but being able to understand my inner dynamics so I know that I'm actually moving in the right direction. Because I notice for many students, young or old, they grapple with something, being able to sense that something's just sitting just on the surface, and to be able to sense, has it really gone deep?
I think we definitely want it to get to the level of feeling. We don't just want it to stay, as we say, in the head. An example, of course, would be just feelings towards the self. I make a mistake and I feel bad. We've gotten to the point where we believe that's the way it's supposed to work. Feel bad if you make a mistake. And again, the truth might suggest, yes, made a mistake and I need to understand that, but do I need to feel bad? And it said you could intellectually say, no, I don't need to feel bad. But the bottom line is, I still feel bad, right? The feeling's still there. So I can't really say I've understood that, yes, I'm intrinsically good. I've understood that, yes, forces are working inside of me that really, if you will, inspire me to make these mistakes. Like all these understandings, the fact that or all these different spiritual ideas, I can say I understand them when they do change the feelings at the feeling level, not just so I can repeat them or tell others them or write them in a book, but when they actually transform the heart or the feelings, then I can say I've understood.
Perhaps the final thought, if it's just lovely we have these conversations about integration, because what you shared really made me think about why I sometimes don't want to avoid and being in certain situations, because I want to be able to practice so that my feelings actually are different, and I'm not trying to isolate myself, but you feel reality in situations where it would seem like as if it's impossible, but it's because something has really struck so deep within yourself. And yet it's nothing showy whatsoever, but it's reality that you're feeling.
Yeah, nothing really to add to that. I think that's where we want to go. So maybe we'll have a little meditation moment. There's so many beliefs swirling around in our heads. And some of them even might be in conflict with each other. It's refreshing to be able to come to a still point in the center of my inner world, a calm place, all the beliefs swirling around me. And I can become an observer of them. And in the stillness, begin to navigate through those beliefs, watch them, perhaps seeing which ones are connected to my core values, which one cause damage to my heart, which ones lead towards my objectives of personal growth and which do not. Beginning to assess my inner inventory of beliefs, not based on their external impact, their impact on the outer world, but what their impact are on me. the soul? Do they support my spiritual growth? Or do I hold on to them out of fear of change? Sitting quietly and checking in on all those beliefs swirling around inside. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Greetings to those online, both Zoom and on YouTube. Sorry that the font is so small, it's hard to see. So, just wanted to remind souls we do have the English workshops are offered on the first Saturday of every month. So, the next one will be in January. So, that's January 7th. And that I believe is just on site. So, please check the center's website or Eventbrite. If you go on Eventbrite, just put Brahma Kumari's Calgary and you'll be able to see all the sessions there for registration. And we have a reminder on-site sessions at the Academy on Saturdays at 12:30, as well as, and so that's a combination of meditation and spiritual discussion as we are now. And also on Mondays at the Inner Peace Center, formerly called the Northeast Center, on the Monday, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. But we always encourage souls to come to the either the online or the on-site drop-in meditation sessions to really experiment. And that's really what it's at. And so thank you for joining with us. Om Shanti.